Right, welcome back fellow stick slingers, or slingers of sticks. Right, first things first, I have to make it a correction. In the last video about arrows, I said that the spine measurement was gained using a 2 kilo weight at 28 inches. I don't know why I said 2 kilos. It's not 2 kilos. It's 2 pound. Don't ask me why I said 2 kilos, I haven't got a clue. So, I mean, to be exact, it's 1.98 pounds at 28 inches to measure spine of arrow shafts. Anyway, that over and done with, out of the way. Right, we're talking about arrows again. Fundamentals, basics. Now, if you bought, and again, this is for beginners and maybe for the visually impaired, you experienced guys, you might get something out of it towards the end, but for the time being, anyway, if you went out and bought one of the beginners kits that I recommended, you would get 5 or 6 arrows, probably something like that, which is, I think that's a Star 35, which is fiberglass, and you've got these ones, which I believe are the Avalon Archery carbon fibre, and you've got these, which I think are something or other hunting, again carbon fibre. Really basic arrows, but the first thing you'll notice is that they have 3 fletchings on them, 3 feathers, 3 veins, and they'll all have 2 of one colour and 1 of another. For instance, these ones are, I think, green and black. Again, I think that's black and brown or black and red. Again, see, I can't see these colours properly. Contrast doesn't, in my eyes, doesn't work properly anymore. However, it's besides the point. The cock feather, which is in that case that one there, the whole point of the cock feather, that differently coloured feather, is to allow you, the archer, to orientate the arrow correctly on the bowstring in relation to the bow. Now what you want is the cock feather, which is the single coloured feather, facing directly away at 90 degrees to the bow and the string. The bow and the string are vertical, the cock feather points out 90 degrees away from the bow. If you're right-handed, it will be pointing to the left. If you're left-handed, it will be pointing to the right on the other side of the bow. The purpose of this is to actually allow the arrow to pass the riser or the body of the bow with the minimum contact. And if there is any contact, to keep that contact equal and even so it doesn't affect the flight of the arrow as much as it might otherwise have done. Now, in the grand scheme of things, if you fired it with the cock arrow, the cock feather hitting the bow, it's not the end of the world, but it will throw that arrow off, in some cases quite considerably, and the further the range you're shooting at, the further it'll throw it off. If you're target shooting, it could be the difference between 3 in the gold and 2 in the gold and 1 in the black. Could be the difference between a 30 and a 20 score, or a 21 score. Can make that much of a difference. So it's a useful thing to be able to orientate the arrows correctly. Now, for the sighted archer, that's not a problem. You literally just orientate the arrow so the cock feathers, the oddly coloured feathers pointing away from the bow, parallel to the string and the bow. Dead easy. However, for the visually impaired archer, this becomes a problem. For instance, with me, I can see the white one okay, but I can't see the other two colours at all. With this one, which if I put it against the white background, right, there we go. So if I hold that like that, I cannot see the arrow at all. If I tilt it, I can see the light reflecting, but if I get the arrow right, the arrow disappears. Even holding it like that, I can cock feather is there, but if I turn it, it disappears. I can't see it properly, it just all becomes a blur. So I need some kind of index with which I can use to index and align the arrow correctly with the bow. Now there are ways of doing this, and we'll do two. One is modern technology, one is old school. Now basically you're going to change the knock. Like the modern method is to change the knock. For instance, most of these modern ones, the knock just pulls out, or you apply a little bit of heat, like some boiling water or whatever, hairdryer, and it'll loosen it up and you can pull it out. And then you can replace it with an indexing knock. The ones I use are by a company called Borin. And basically they produce a knock, I don't know whether you'll be able to see it against the back of the table, which has a blade on the top, and that becomes your indexing mark. That would line up on the shaft with the cock feather. I'll show you one I've already done. This is a this is an old arrow. And basically replacing the nocks, if you can see that, there's the knock there. There's the blade on the top. Can you see that? If I turn it slightly, like it appears to be a bulge. That gives those arrows, for me, gives those arrows a completely new lease of life, because I cannot see those fletchings in this light, which I've been told is quite good. In strong daylight I can't see them because of the reflection of the feathers. But I'll put my thumb on there and straight away I know that's a cock feather, because the indexing mark is on the top. If I turn it around the other way, that's not the cock feather, that isn't, there we go, there's the cock feather, because I can feel that notch straight away. And it can actually help, because if you're pulling out your quiver, you grab hold of the top and straight away you're reorientating the arrow before you get it anywhere near the bow, just by turning it in your fingers. So it's a handy thing to have on there. So this entire set of arrows I have replaced the nocks on, and it's basically given all of these arrows a new lease of life. I can use them again without worrying about damaging the fletchings or losing them because they're going off at a tangent at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Right, another thing you can do as well, again I put the Borin nocks on there, yeah, but I've also got rid of the different coloured feathers. I've just gone with the white. Maximise what I can, maximise what I'm able to see downrange. Now if the light's nice and bright, I can actually see these to a certain extent against the target. So I've got an idea roughly of where they've gone. But pulling them out of the quiver, I literally just get hold of the back end of the arrow, feel for the indexing mark, and then we're good to go. Straight onto the string, and we're good to go. Right, so that's the modern way of doing it. Like I said, you can literally just pull these out and replace them with an indexing one. And Borin do them in every conceivable size and colour. If there's a size of shaft used by archers, there's a Borin knock to go into or on that shaft. Now, the old school way of doing it is what my dad taught me many years ago. It's funny, I can remember my dad making loads of arrows, but I can't remember ever shooting with him or seeing him shoot. But basically he taught me this. It's an old school way of doing the same sort of thing, indexing the bows. I think the Borin ones are probably for bow hunters to index, because when you're hunting, you see a quarry animal. The whole idea of when you're hunting is you can't take your eye off that animal for a second, because you can guarantee the second you look away from it and then look back, you won't see it because it'll be camouflaged or whatever, or it'll move slightly. Whereas if you keep your eye on it, you can track it. So you want to be able to draw the arrow from your quiver, knock it onto your bow, and be good to go without taking your eye off your quarry. And what my dad used to do is he would get his arrows, Yep, this is one of them. You would get a piece of matchstick, about 10 millimeters long. You would find the cock feather, which is that one there, and you would literally just glue that piece of matchstick onto the end of the arrow in line with the cock feather, and then you would wrap some thread or some tape around it. Now, bow hunting in the United Kingdom has been illegal since 1965, and it was never something which was ever really talked about, stuff like that. But the idea has reoccurred to me, because this was something my dad did, and my granddad and my great-granddad. So, but I've taken it to the next level. Instead of wrapping thread around it, don't know whether you can see it, I've actually used some electrical heat shrink, just there. I glued the piece of matchstick on, slipped a piece of heat shrink over the end, and just shrunk it on. Now I get hold of that, and straight away, just like the bow ring nocks, I've got an index mark. I can feel where the cock feather is. Now I'll probably at some point replace all these nocks because they're actually nice arrows, and I do like these arrows, they shoot well. But for the time being, I'm just going to do that. You see, just there. I'm just going to put a piece of matchstick, a little bit of heat shrink it on, and I'll be good to go. I'll be able to use these arrows again without fear of losing them for having put them on the bow incorrectly. Right, anyway, there we go. So, any old arrow, any new arrow, you can replace the points for the visually impaired. As a sighted archer, they actually come in quite useful as well. Not because you'll be able to hunt with them, but say for I don't know, it's just a nice thing to be able to do. If you're into speed shooting or traditional shooting, things like that, it may speed things up here. There we go. Anyway, old school technology. Right. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you found it useful. Comments in the comment section, same as usual. Like, share, subscribe, and we'll talk again soon. Don't know what we'll talk about. I'm sure we'll think of something. But take care. Stay safe.